everything paranormal. Para-X. The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Bright the cheeks and warm the heart, but tread the circle thrice about to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Merry meet everybody and welcome. My guest tonight is Ivo Dominguez, and he's got a new series of books, really interesting books coming out. It's the Witch's Sunshine series. It's a tongue twister book, and it's about witchcraft to celebrate your sensual and practical self. Now, he's been active in Wicca and the pagan community since 1978, serves as one of the elders in the Assembly of the Sacred Wheel, and he's taught at gatherings and conferences, and is also the author of several books, including The 4 Elements of the Wise and Practical Astrology for Witches and Pagans. And as you all know, questions and comments are welcome from those in the chat room. And if you can't be there, you can listen to the podcast tomorrow. But if you are listening now and you want to get in touch with us, it's paraxradionetwork.com and jump in the chat room. All righty. Oh, hi. It's nice to have you back for a visit.
I'm delighted to be here. Looking forward to talking to you.
Your books are good. These books, I got a couple of samples, and I'm like, okay, this is really good. But, you know, it's a new endeavor for you, and it's going to keep you busy for a while because there are 12 books in all, and they'll be released regularly from different times, I guess. I mean, the first 2, right?
The first 2 are out already, the Aries Witch and the Taurus Witch. August, Gemini Witch drops, and then Cancer in September, and so on. Almost every month. There'll be a couple of gaps because of the publishing industry's way of doing things. But it's a lot. Now, I'm not the sole author. I write about half of each book.
Right. And
then there's a second author that is of that sign that speaks to the lived experience of being in that sign and living their magic that way. And then there's short pieces by additional people of that sign for the most part. Because it's a combination of things to try to bring people into contact with the idea of astrology is integral to things, whether or not you're thinking of it as an astrologer or somebody who even thinks about astrology. Honestly, everybody is all 12 signs. And you in your chart, you have all 12 signs. So the sun is important because that's the source of life and energy and power within you, so it's your starting point. But honestly, though I recommend people pick up the book that is their sun sign, this is. I hope that this series will actually be useful for people that are trying to learn about different parts of themselves or people that are part of their life that are of those signs. But the focus is really on making it accessible for people that are primarily witches or magical practitioners. And this was not aimed at the I'm an astrologer crowd, even though there are quite a few astrologers that also participated in it.
Yeah, that's the thing. And the book, the books delve deep into the sun signs on both witchcraft and everyday life, which is kind of unique in itself. And I'm going to date myself back, but I remember when everybody just had to have Linda Goodman's sun sign books. I certainly remember that era as well. Thank you. I feel better now. But correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that there is another series of books that have a whole comprehensive book devoted to each sign. I mean, what you're doing is really kind of nice, and different.
Well, what's different? I mean, there have been over the years lots and lots of books that were basically annuals giving you predictive information about your sign.
Mm-hmm.
But those are kind of they're good for the year that they're meant for, and then they cease to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
With these, the idea is that you're learning about the astrology associated with your sun sign and really where the source of your life and energy. How about this? If you're a witch, every time you draw on power, the first place it comes through, the first portal in you that arrives through is through your sun, the sun within the core, your divine spark.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives a powerful flavor from the get-go. But these books also speak, by the way, they are written to be positive representations of all the signs.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody needs to be reminded of 1,001 things that you find in pop astrology online about these are all the stereotypical bad traits, these are all the stereotypical good traits. Honestly, let's remember, if you're picking up one of these books, you probably think of yourself as magical in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And that means you have a relationship with your power and the powers of the world around you, and you can call them, banish them, reinforce some things, tone some things down. So this is about learning how to make the best use of what you have rather than obsessing on the ways that it doesn't work for you. And I think one of the other things is most astrologers aren't pagans, aren't witches, aren't sorcerers, aren't magicians. Most astrologers use astrology as their primary focus, but they don't do ritual or other practices. I mean, that's changed a little bit over the years. So these books are written from the perspective of understanding, well, why do you think these herbs or crystals or various things are assigned in those tables of correspondences to a particular planet or sign? And the more you know about why something is connected to particular things, the more you have a capacity to, if you know the name or the essence of something, you can call it and use it.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about all the negative traits, and I think a lot of people, because in teenage years, okay, I'm a Cancer, I'm a this, and you read about it, and you talk yourself into what they've written about it.
And you pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it had to be because it's in a book. So I'm going to be cranky. My sign is really cranky, and I'm over emotional, and I'm not smart. And
how about this? I would say that everything in astrology can be used for developing your magic, developing yourself as a human being. Or it can be used as an infinite resource for rationalizing why you're stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that, I mean, that's true for many systems. But the goal of this series is really twofold. One, it's meant to be empowering, and it's also meant to take a glimpse into the style of consciousness or style of reacting to the world that each of the signs has, as a way of then saying, these are the tools you have, make the best of them, make them work for you. But there's another thing, is that these books approach the idea of the 12 signs as also being the equivalent of 12 spirits or 12 divine beings. You can't have this much thought, energy, and pattern by so many human minds for so many thousand years focusing on these images or these ideas without them being full-fledged beings. So these are spirits that you can call upon as well. There's a spirit that is Aries, there's a spirit that is Taurus, and so on.
Let's talk about that, because I was going to ask you that down the line. I never really thought about that. And when I saw that, I went, boink, the light bulb went over my head, and then the dunce cap went on that I didn't realize that. Talk about that a little bit, please.
Well, it's all right, let's start from what I believe, because honestly, this is to a certain degree a question of what you believe in or what you hold to be a reasonable explanation for things. Mm-hmm. And I'm one of those folks that believes that absolutely everything in existence has a certain amount of energy, soul, spirit. Everything is alive and has consciousness in its own fashion. Mm-hmm. varies dramatically from, the consciousness of a grain of sand is way different than that of a mountain or a redwood or me, but there is that spark of energy, that spirit within each thing. And there's also the idea of whenever anything is believed in long enough, it gets velveteen rabbited into existence. Now, mind you, I actually believe that the 12 signs are inherent and exist whether or not human beings ever existed and whether or not we ever noticed them. But in the same way that we come up with images for gods, goddesses, divine beings of various sorts and say, this is what their attributes are, these are what their colors are, these are the things that attract their attention as offerings, yada, yada, and this is what their job description is, the same is true for the signs. And every human being that has ever been born, I'm a Sag, every Sag that has ever lived and will live is connected to me in the same way that I'm connected to everybody who's ever been a witch in my line and will be a witch in my line. There is, and the thing is, human beings do better. And I know people say, well, you shouldn't anthropomorphize, which is, the practice of imagining things as being human beings in order to, but you know what? Humans do better if something has a face and eyes and a mouth on it.
Yeah.
It's easier to conceptualize communication, though I would say vivomorphism is probably a better idea because it's about imagining how a living being, how you would interact with a living being that is those things. So these are powers to be conjured with. These are powers to be called upon. There have been a number of times when we've done ritual where instead of calling for the help, support, blessing, energy of the 4 elements and the 4 directions, that we've gone around the circle and stopped 12 times and called in the power of each of the 12 signs into the space. Because the other thing that people forget is that these are, in addition to being strong, powerful, spiritual beings, in a sense they're kind of meta-ancestor, if you want to think of it that way. They have ancestral properties to them, if you want to think of it that way. But beyond that, the cycle of going through the sun signs over the course of the year is a different way of describing the wheel of the year.
Mm-hmm.
They each represent changes in energy that occur. And honestly, the 8 holidays that many, not all, pagan witchy folks celebrate are anchored in solstices and equinoxes, and that takes up 8 of the signs. And then, what happens with the rest is they're the ones that are about wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey transition, the mutable signs like Sages. And what I'm saying is that these are 12 ways of describing the energy that happens as Earth and the Sun go through their yearly dance.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about a minute that each book is not just about sun signs. You talk about things like moon and rising sign traits and tons of stuff.
I do. One of the things that happens is that you'll often come across, if you begin to get interested, and by the way, one of my not-so-hidden agendas is to try to get more people to embrace using the language of astrology or the concepts of astrology, even if they don't have the desire to become an astrologer with a capital A, which is one of the reasons why I also wrote the Practical Astrology for Witches and Pagans book. Mm-hmm. But when you start searching around online, you'll find descriptions of, if your moon is this, it means the following things. And that's generally true. And honestly, what's included in each of these books is like, what happens when you're an Aries, for example, that has a Taurus moon? What happens when it's an Aries with a Sag moon? Because there's about several paragraphs which give you a clue about, in that specific case of you being that sun sign and you being that moon sign, how they interact. And the other part that's different is that it adds in some of the things that are likely to be part of your bag of tricks if you wish to develop them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I talk too much.
No, you don't. Yeah, no, they'd rather listen to you. Trust me. Go ahead.
So I also do the same thing with the rising signs. And then let's talk about the limits of the publishing industry. In the best of all possible worlds, each of these books would have been 2 or 3 times longer. Mm. And I will honestly say that one of the hardest parts of being the author that was riding shotgun on making sure that all the books happen is these books have to be short and simple and sweet so that the people can actually read them, absorb it, and use them. And the length was kept down for a variety of reasons. In the best of all possible worlds, they could have been double the size or triple the size. But you know what? This is enough of an entry point. And knowing the big three, and I know people talk about the big four and other things, and nowadays there's a lot of memes and social media things about astrology. It's a thing again. And a lot of them are simplistic, some are not. But knowing just your sun sign, your moon sign, and how it interacts with your sun, how your rising interacts with your sun, gives you a lot of clarity fast on how to make use of your capacities as a witch and as a human being. So that's included as well.
And you're talking about it could have been double, and just in case people want to think that this is a pamphlet, it isn't. It's more than 200 pages. Yeah.
It's not a pamphlet. No, it's not a pamphlet, but let's just say that there were many things in the tentative outline for them that got chopped because they had to be the size of books that end up on shelves in bookstores for commercial mass market. They couldn't be tomes. They couldn't be encyclopedias.
Well,
it's so that's always the frustration. But I don't know any author that I'm friends with that doesn't complain about all the things that they had to leave on the cutting room floor.
But you said you have like twice as much information. That means maybe another 12 books.
If maybe. Honestly, I thought about another series that I thought about writing was the planets.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good idea.
And I'm going to say that one of the reasons why I've been over the years trying to encourage more magical folks to use astrology is I'll compare it for a second to the four elements, because it's something that not everybody uses but is broadly known. The idea of the elements in and of themselves is it gives your mind words and ideas to latch onto. These are the building blocks of the universe. Mm-hmm. And these are particular places within me or energies I can call it, and so on. The 12 signs are also styles of consciousness, styles of essence, styles of expressing energy. So by knowing more about the signs, you have a way to connect to that. 7 books about the elder planets, or if I'm lucky, let me add some of the newer ones so we can go to 9 or 10. That would also give you another set of magical words. I mean, there's lots of people that think of the language and power of naming in magic, but it really is about understanding the concepts of these things. And that would be a delightful thing to do.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. Got a question from the chat room.
Oh, there's a chat question. Awesome.
Yes, there is. She says, sun and moon and rising signs are important. If we have a number of planets, stellium, in one sign,
different sign, yeah.
Is that book also relevant?
It is, but let me explain. Let me explain why you. Most people, when they start studying astrology, they start with the sun, then they start exploring everything else about their chart, and then eventually I'm going to aim them back at their sun. But when they return to repeat their journey of understanding, they'll look at their sun sign in a different way. Sometimes people will say, I've got a ton of planets. Basically, a stellium is a bunch of planets lined up tight together in a different sign than my sun. So doesn't that make me more that sign than your sun? Yes and no. The sun is, just like the sun in the heavens, is what provides the energy that makes the plants grow, makes the weather cycles turn, et cetera, et cetera. The sun in your birth chart is where all the energy enters into your chart. Now it then gets distributed to the planets that are in that stellium. So, but then they express, like, Mercury's your style of thinking and communication. If the moon is part of that stellium, and it's reflecting the sun's light, so you still have to take it with and your stellium is still receiving its primary source from your sun sign.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I'm going to say that it is both useful and not useful to... One of the places where people get themselves in trouble when they're expanding their knowledge of astrology is that they try to take on more before they have fully understood or integrated what they've just learned.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I also teach herbalism, and one of the things I tell people is together we're going to come up with a list of 27 herbs, or I'll pick a number. 27 is usually the one I pick, depending upon the person, or let's say 21 if it's a person of a certain sort. And I'll say, great, I want you over the course of this year to get to know these 27 herbs inside out. I want you to spend a week or two with one at a time and fully integrate all the different uses, magical, medicinal, folkloric, et cetera, until they become like best friends with you, because that is enough for you to do almost anything you need as an herbalist.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than knowing a teeny bit and having a very faint relationship with the essence of each herb that you have 120 in your cabinet.
Yeah, it's not about numbers.
Well, or it's think of astrology as, and I'm dating myself if we want to do the old stuff, though people have probably seen the same with Google Maps and layers. If you turn on all the layers that shows every last little bit of detail, whether it's a Google Map or pick your poison, medical charts where in my day you had anatomy on lots of different acetate sheets that laid on top of each other so you could see all the physiology and anatomy stuff going on,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes almost unintelligible, which is why you turn off some of the layers, remove some of the details so you can see what the underlying structure is doing, and then maybe make those go away and bring up another thing to the surface. But you are your sun sign, but that doesn't mean that it's all you are. As I said, all 12 signs exist in your chart in the same way that all 4 elements plus spirit exist in your manifest form.
Mm-hmm.
They're all present. It's just the proportions vary. And I use an example all the time that which makes more sense if you're a magical person. But I'm going to say most people have heard the phrase, nature hates a vacuum or abhors a vacuum. And there's also the idea of polarity, that something may draw its opposite. Hey, I have got no air in my chart.
Mm.
My birth chart is like, nope, no planets in air. So here's the thing. And I have an acquaintance who has got almost the same chart as me, except that he was born up here and I was born in Cuba, which meant closer to the equator, changed the layout of the houses, yada, yada. But still, we were same day, same year, and not that far apart time-wise, so there are a lot of similarities between us. And they are a person of few words. When you have a total lack in a chart, one of the ways it plays is that either you don't express that energy very much, or the universe says, oh my God, and you are actually draw more into it than you possibly want. So I have an excess of air energy because I have nothing in my chart to regulate it. If you want to think of it that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And if somebody has a big cluster of planets like a stellium in one place in their chart, then the lesson is you have a ton of that stuff, wake up everything else in your chart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you said earlier, you don't have to be an astrologer to understand this. And this is one of the things that I was really, because sometimes they get very school book kind of things, but other people can write and everybody can understand, and that's what's going on in this book.
I was especially happy with that I was able to find folks of each of the signs that were able to speak to, this is how it plays out in my life, this is the kind of self-care that works for me, this is the kind of grounding and centering that works or doesn't work, this is the way that I get my own way and how I manage to wriggle my way out of my own traps. Because the lived experience stuff is so essential. I'm going to say that a lot of times when you are looking at books on astrology, if you're a non-astrologer, it's like looking at upper-level abstracted mathematics when you're not a mathematician.
Mm-hmm.
Or it is written with so much jargon that it will take you a while just to figure out the way that the language is being used in that particular field.
Yeah.
But the other bit is they're not written to be portals of entry. They're written, most of them, to be ways for practitioners to refine what they already have. But all right, like the lived experience part's important because if you let's pretend for a moment that I don't know if you can or can't, that you can read music,
Mm-hmm.
or that you know how to read choreography. You can look at a piece of music that's notated, or a dance that's the choreography notes for a dance that's in front of you, and you can sort of, depending upon your talent in hearing things in your head or seeing things in your head, you can sort of get a gist of what it's going to be like when it's played.
Mm-hmm.
But actually hearing the music or watching the dance is how you really understand it fully.
Right.
When we talk about lived experience of a sign, that's like watching the dance or listening to the music rather than just looking at the notation.
Yeah. I don't know. I kept turning pages, and there are all these new things that I was not thinking about. But, I mean, you really made me think for a lot of different things. And, shame on me that I didn't know some of those things. But
I think my job, and that, to some degree this is true in all my books, is to point out stuff that once you see it, you go, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, and completely different scenario, but when I was a young pup, I mean, one of the people that I was very impressed by was Carl Sagan.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because he managed to make science understandable to the masses.
Yeah.
So for me, any time that I can turn people on to owning and understanding a piece of any lore, that makes me happy. And it also has a multiplier effect. Like, once you understand the 12 signs or the planets as in the same way I was like being best friends with and knowing 21 herbs, for example,
Mm-hmm.
Then when you see in a book, oh, and this is an herb of Mars, and you read the ingredients of oil in an oil mixture or an incense, or you look at different kinds of materials that are brought together to create a magical pouch or a talisman or something, you realize, oh, now I understand how those particular herbs, crystals, metals, whatever woods are being used for those particular properties because they help to channel that Gemini energy or that Pisces energy, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
The charts become more alive when it's not just, well, I don't know why they assigned that to that, but okay.
You're right. All right, we got to take a quick break, which is equivalent to a 7th inning stretch in baseball. So everybody that's sitting up, you got 2 minutes to stretch, and starting right now.
Cauldron will be right back, so don't go away. If you end up with webbed feet, remember, you've been warned.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. Covenant House is the national leader providing safe housing for youth, 50 years strong. Every youth who walks into Covenant House gets clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. So, look closer at Covenant House and help us fight youth homelessness. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
Are you haunted by shadow people in the middle of the night?
Do you secretly love all things creepy and spooky, enjoying ghost stories and horror fiction from the best storytellers?
Do you have a true ghost experience you want to share, but no one will believe you?
If yes, listen to the professionals on What Are You Afraid Of? Horror Paranormal Show, Friday nights at 9 p.m. on Para X Radio and at www.whatareyouafraidofpodcast.com.
What Are You Afraid Of on Para X?
Our creepy and demented hosts are on call to provide you with all your spooky needs with true ghost stories, interviews, indie music, and new horror fiction. We are ready to scare you.
Para X. Missed an episode of Stirring the Cauldron? Then be sure to check out marlabrooks.com and check out the archive. And while you're there, check out Marla's weekly Witches Oracle card reading. Explore the site to find many great resources, such as information on tarot, oracle readings, metaphysical consultations, and links to all of Marla's books. That's marlabrooks.com. Welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Once again, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Yeah, my guest tonight is Ivo Dominguez, and we're talking about his new Witch's Sun Sign series of books. I say it 3 times and I'm going to choke. But anyway, at first glance, I thought I need just the book on my sign. It's okay, well, everybody else, I'm just going to grab Cancer. And that's all I needed. But when I read about the chapter about what sets each sign off and how to recover from it, I think I changed my mind that I'd better be on the safe side because we'd better get all 12 signs. At least it would save us a lot of grief down the line, I think.
Well, I've had several people tell me that they're planning on buying the books that correspond to their partners or their kids, or because as a way of gaining a little bit more understanding, and also a way of helping them to be their best. Mm-hmm. So, and the other bit I'm going to say is, and actually Diotima, who's the co-author on the Aries Witch, I mean, she's going to suggest that if you are a fledgling astrologer, want to learn a little bit more about astrology, it's a big concentrated dose of information about each of the 12 signs, so that you can work your way through as a way of becoming more adept in astrology as well, because these are foundational, these are building block things. The other bit is, I actually have told a couple of people, if there's a sign that you think of as being problematic, that you tend to, I'm not going to say anything horrible, but let's just say lock horns with. Mm-hmm. There is a fundamental truth that if something irritates the crap out of you, then there's something valuable there for you to learn about yourself. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of ways to phrase that, but I said, well, that one bothers you? That's the one you need to read if you're trying to, because you can also use these as ways of coming to terms with different parts of yourself. Because like I said, all of them are in you. Hey, I do want to say something about variations between various people's take on things. Mm-hmm. No system of divination or magic is personality neutral or culturally neutral. In other words, like when you look at, I'm going to compare it to tarot for a second. How many tarot decks are there? A bazillion. I mean, I have no clue of how many exist. And even the ones that are in some way descendants of the Rider-Waite Coleman Smith decks, even if they are in that family grouping, the artist's personality and take on spirituality is all over the imagery for each of those different decks. The books written by astrologers or tarots or anybody is going to say as much about their family of origin and their culture of origin as the magic or metaphysics as well. So I'm just going to say that one of the reasons why we wanted to have several people writing in each book and including short pieces by additional people is because it's about getting a variety of experiences of what it is to be that thing. Because you come with your culture and your history with you, and it changes how you see the things and what you view things to be.
You just mentioned tarot. I'm going to jump in here. You also, in the book, include tarot correspondences, including the major and minor arcanas, including the plants that attach to the mirror, to the minor arcana. I mean, and the fire signs. I mean, this is the thing about this book. You think something, you look and see, okay, well, this chapter's on this, and you kind of have a thought about what it might be, but it's not. It enhances it tenfold. You know, there's all these little things going on there, and I think that's the beauty of the books. I mean, aside from the good information.
I can tell you that the process of writing shotgun and helping to manage the tracking down people to write the long pieces and the short pieces and everything, and then having them submitted, etc., has been a funny experiment proving the point in some ways. And I've told a couple of people, it's like, for example, that when I reached out to people for short pieces or writing for things for the Aries Witch book, guess what? They responded fast, and they turned in things quickly, and they also tended to be short on the word count. The Geminis asked the most questions about, whether or not they were getting the assignment right or what they needed to adjust about it. I actually had a hard time finding enough Cancers because some people are like, I don't know, that seems pretty self-revelatory. I don't know if I want to share that about myself.
Oh, jeez.
The Aquarius were the most rebellious bunch. So that the funny thing is that each sign kind of, in approaching the writers and having the responses, man, you could tell what sign they were by their behavior and questions or concerns or input around their part of each book.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I just can't. I can't give you too many accolades on this, and I don't want to sound like I'm, just, ugh. But seriously, I mean, you things. Ouch! Sorry, cat in my face.
I'm keeping a dog at bay right now.
There we go. But there's the things that you talk about, like the type of witchcraft that comes naturally to each sign. Now that was really interesting for me. Talk about that a minute, because I really did like that.
So I wrote, and that particular chapter is written by the co-author of each sign. Mm-hmm. And what I provided was basically the outline with these are the talking points or the questions to answer. So basically, the reason there's a flow and pattern so that each of the books, even though they're very different, you can tell that they're in the same family, is that I gave them writing prompts for, this is what I want that chapter to be about, but it's got to be about your life.
Mm-hmm.
And man, there's a lot of variation in that particular chapter from sign to sign, and also where people talk about how they take care of themselves, recharging and resting and shielding and taking care of themselves, all the different styles. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that I and the lovely and amazingly talented Alicia Gallo from Llewellyn had to be really cautious in giving feedback or editing, because you didn't want to make it not be that sign anymore because you wanted it to be something different.
Hmm.
So there was a process of kind of like taking a step back to make sure that the writing prompts were the writing prompts, but if the only time that real guidance was like, no, well, actually the single guidance thing we gave most often was, it's too long, we have to stay in this number of words for the total length of the book, yada yada. But there were times that it also was a way of going like, oh, well, that doesn't ring true for me, but you know what, it rings absolutely true to that Capricorn. So that was interesting in that process that I continued to discover more about the signs simply in the process of working with the people that were part of this big project.
Yeah, I mean, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but sure. There's, also a chapter on shielding and cleansing, and, there's the generic info, whatever, but because we all taught, somebody said, well, this is how you do this, how you shield, blah, blah, blah. But now it's for 12 different reasons. I mean, 12 different ways because of the signs, right?
Right. Because for example, let me talk about, and there's also small chunks of that included in the moon sign and rising parts of each of the books as well. because all these things have an impact on the texture, the nature of your aura, your energy body, how sticky it is, or how easily it lets go of, or how strongly it attracts or absorbs particular things. So there's variation in, if you want to think of it this way, there's variation in our energy, anatomy, and physiology that is guided by our particular combination of signs that are in our chart. And that just makes it a little bit easier for you to fine-tune. I mean, I told a friend of mine recently who has a ton of air in their chart that, air when it's stirred up picks up all the dust and all the debris and it circles around them. If you hold still and go to center and go quiet, the debris and the dust drops out of your energy and you can walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
That advice works for them. Guess what? Does not work for a water sign. Because what happens when you drop salt into water? It dissolves, and the only way you're going to get that salt out of it is for the water to boil and evaporate, or to be diluted with enough water so that the saltiness doesn't matter, or 1,000 other things. But each of the signs has particular preferences or tendencies in how they respond to energy and magic and charged atmospheres, and especially the unwholesome ones that we want to keep clear of.
Yeah. And for the like you said, about 50% is written by somebody else, but in the table of contents in each book, it kind of, it's the same, except for the stories and things like that. So, you're not going to lose anything, in the process. It's not 12 completely different books. They all kind of follow the same pattern.
And which makes it easier for people that are comparing between two signs to go back and forth between them. And see what's similar and what's different.
Yeah, and I forget which chapter it is, but you have, in one chapter, you have a reading for each sign, and I can't remember what it was about, but I read it. I jumped to Cancer. It was spot on. It was me. There was no doubt. But
there's a chapter where there are like basically core concepts for each of the signs.
Okay.
And there's also a chapter that has correspondences, but also an affirmation for each sign. I mean, there's a lot of information crammed into it, and like I said, the main guiding principle throughout all of it is this going to give the person more tools to be happier and better, or not? And if it's not actually contributing to the quality of their life, then it's information that doesn't need to stay in the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I'm going to jump around again now because all the witches I know are foodies in one way or the other.
Oh yes.
And the recipes sound.
I love to cook.
Good. They sound delicious. The recipes, like Aries is sweet and sour for success, and Taurus is fetching fettuccine. Which one is yours? What's your recipe? You got one in there.
Well, all the recipes, all the food recipes, came from Dawn Hunt, who did an amazing job, because we decided, okay, instead of trying to, because the other thing was there were really, really tight deadlines in getting these books done. So I said, tracking down 12 people to come up with recipes, because I'm going to say that this is a scary part. Then you're going to go, how is it possible? So I'm about to, I already turned in Aquarius. I'm about to turn in the last edits on Pisces in the next few weeks. But basically, all 12 had to be written in about a 14, 15-month period.
That's tough. Oh, God.
Right.
And you're still sane? Is this, Wow.
I'm not sure I ever was.
All right.
To be fair, right?
All right, to be fair, but you didn't lose a marble or two here along the way.
No.
Okay.
But so that Dawn Aurora Hunt is a fabulous creator of food and artisanal flavored olive oils and pre-mixed dry stuff for making your soups and sauces, and I mean, amazing stuff. So, and she's also a witch. So I said, why don't we just have Dawn come up with the 12 recipes for the books?
Yeah.
And so my job, but she wasn't a fully fledged astrology plugged in person. So she and I had chats and calls and Zooms and emails to talk about traditionally what kinds of flavors, textures, preferences each of the signs have. So she basically interviewed me to figure out what each of the signs would like.
So Aries likes sweet and sour and fish. Yeah. Let's be real. Both Taurus and Cancer love comfort food. It's just different kind of comfort. Yeah, I know, it's a shame. I mean, it's comfort food is like live and breathe. That's it. Terrible.
I always joke with people that when you look at the glyph for Taurus and people go, "Oh yeah, it's a bull's head." I see, the circle and the two little bits that are the horns. Mm-hmm. And I go, "Nah, it's a potato with some eyes on it."
Mm-hmm. Well, we have food recipes. Talk about some of the other recipes in the books.
They're also in each book. There's a oil recipe that you can use for anointing candles, anointing yourself with particular energy, and also then it gets more variable because there are people that have included recipes for charged waters and preparing crystals. There are people that have included short rituals or meditative practices for either pumping up their energy or clearing and cooling away discomfort. So there's a lot more variation in the short pieces that are by other authors. And then, of course, in every book, and I think I mentioned it indirectly, in every book there is a ritual for calling for guidance from the spirit of your sign. Mm-hmm. And I really hope people, and hopefully people will modify it to meet their practice, but I hope people use it because I have found it particularly useful in my own practice.
Well, in the table of contents, too, it makes it real easy because you have the regular table of contents, but you also have the page of recipes and spells, and so it makes it easier.
And in the back of the book, there's also suggested books to read, places where you can go online to get some charts done of the free kind. And also one of my favorite astrology podcasts. So that at the back of the book, there's information if you want to take it a little bit further and continue learning more on your own.
And you also have a couple of places where people can write notes, too. That helps.
Yes. I mean, the book, hopefully, it was also designed so it's easy in your hand. So that hopefully people will actually, take it with them both to do ritual or to look up stuff on the fly when they're working in their kitchen or their altar or whatever it is that they do. Mm-hmm. So, and honestly, there's a value in something that has visual appeal.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's always people are saying, well, do I read the book from cover to cover first, or can I just open it and pick it up and, go to special things that catch your eye?
Well, the beauty of it is technically you can open the book anywhere and it will still make sense. Mm-hmm. So that, though I'm going to, this is just me, but I always read books from, I even read the introductions and the forewords. I read the whole book from start to finish. Mm-hmm. But I know that not everybody does it that way. And this book was written in a way that you can read the title or read the practice or read the recipe or read the thing, go, I'm going to do that first. And it's not the end of the world because as long as you eventually read all of it so that you get a more rounded perspective on it. Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you're a jump around person, you can do that, but you'll get more value in the long run if you make sure you read all of it.
Well, I think when you start, if you want to just open the book, like bibliomancy or something,
right.
Once you start reading it, you're going to want to read more. I mean, because there's just so many different topics, and you're going to read the first thing and you're going to realize how many bits and pieces are in that, how many layers it's not just one-dimensional. So there's more thought, and then you think, oh my God, all the other ones are like this too. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to read the whole thing. So, I mean, everybody's going to first go and their signs and find out, well, what's my sun sign, blah, blah, blah. They're going to think it's kind of like a Linda Goodman book, but it isn't. It's so much better. And, yeah.
And what I hope is that one part that was hard because we had to keep it short was just just as a starting point. Also, each book contains a brief bio of an occultist, magician, witch that is of that sign, and a short list of others of the same. Because sometimes people find that to be useful as a way of getting a different kind of insight into the signs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much in here in this little book, and again, little fat chunky book.
It is a chunky book, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really easy to hang on to too. That's kind of important. We're going to kind of run out of time pretty soon. Yeah, I know. We should have done 2 hours. Next time I tell you to come over, remind me we can do 2 hours. But let's talk a little bit about where they can find you and, the all that stuff that goes along with what's on your website.
Honestly, I'm pretty easy to find if you ivodominguezjr.com, my whole name at .com, and my website lists where I'm going to be teaching next, what I'm up to with my books. There's also look at all the links. I've got a ton of recordings of chants with lyrics for people to learn. And there's a section that has path workings that you can listen to for the holidays and for the moons and a couple of other things, and that's all free content. So look me up there to see what I'm up to, and also learn some chants, listen to some path workings, and there's a mailing list to sign up for. But honestly, having an unusual name makes it fairly easy for people to track me down.
Yeah, you're easy. And I peeked over to Amazon. So they have 9 books available. A couple of them, again, ready.
As they drop for pre-order, they show up in Amazon, yeah.
Yeah, and they can be pre-ordered, which is important. And, and there's also on Kindle. I don't think they're all up there now, but
they're getting there.
But they're getting there. So, there's a whole different bunch of ways that people can get the books. And, I mean, if eventually, when you get them all done, do you think that maybe you can get the whole set that people can buy at one time?
Yeah, I mean, once they're all out. I mean, there was a discussion about whether or not we wait until all 12 are ready and done to release them all at once. Mm-hmm. But financially, it doesn't make sense for the company or the printers.
Yeah.
So it also clogs their catalog in a way. So it was easier to just start dropping them once a month, or there'll be a couple of times there's a month of gap in between. But all 12 will be out by sometime, early next year.
Mm-hmm.
Probably late summer. The whole series will be, and I hope somebody decides to take a picture of all 12 of them together in their bookshop at some point. That would be lovely, because the colors and covers were designed, and when they're on a shelf, you'll be able to see the glyph for each of the signs in order, and that would be kind of cool too. Little things like that please me. I'm sorry.
No, it's important. And just in chat room, somebody got a pre-order on for Cancer already, and
awesome.
I was going to do that too. She beat me to the punch. She always does. But yeah, I mean, it's you don't have to be a witch to enjoy these books anyway. I mean, it's all your traits, and you can learn about yourself without, saying that, well, I do spells, I'm a witch or whatever. Because I mean, there's so many different types of witches too.
I'm going to say that if you believe that the universe is bigger than the physical, that you can probably make use of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and learn a lot. And I mean, when it gets my cogs going, I think it's a really good idea. So I kept opening this book. I was going back between Aries and Taurus, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you for writing this, and in advance actually, because we got 12 of them coming out. But
like I said, the last one in the series, Pisces, I'll be turning in the final edits sometime in the next couple of weeks, and then I will say I've already started writing the next book that has nothing to do with these things.
Really? You're glutton for punishment, huh? In a good way.
I am. Yeah, I am.
Any hint about what maybe it was going to be?
So I wrote a book on Keys to Perception, which is about psychic development.
Right.
So I'm writing a book that's kind of like the flip side, which is a book about raising, shaping, and managing energy, all the active talents.
That sounds good. All right, well, we're going to put you on the calendar for that, too. Just keep writing, and if you don't mind, keep coming back, because you got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
No, of course I'll come back. I love to talk, and you're pretty easy to talk to.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm easy to talk to. Yeah, that easy. Never mind. Well, I'm going to go order Cancer Witch after we hang up. And I want to thank you for being with us. And again, looking forward for the next time, and looking forward to get the Cancer book. It'll be, it'll be there soon enough, September, I think. But yeah, I'll just sit on pins and needles for a while. But that's a good thing. Something to look forward to.
It's something to look forward to, yep.
Exactly. All right. Again, thank you once again. And let's thank everybody for listening in. And until next time, everybody, blessed be, and merry meet again. Good night.
This has been another edition of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Be sure to tune in next week at the same time for another great guest and more fun. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2009.
You have been listening to the Para X Radio Network.